ओम परतत्वे सदा लीनो रामकृष्णसमाज्ञया यो धर्मस्थापनरतो वीरेशं तं नमाम्यहम्. We are studying Swami Vivekananda's Jnana Yoga here, and today we have to start a new chapter. Name of the chapter is Realization. It is based upon Kathopanishad. And the date is delivered in London, 29th October 1896. Now, first two chapters of Jnana Yoga, Necessity of Religion and Real Nature of Man, were delivered in June 96. After that, there was a big summer break. And in October, again the new series, you may say, was started. And so, though the real nature of man was also based upon Kathopanishad, but that belonged as if to the old series. And so here, Swamiji is taking up Kathopanishad as if he is taking it first time. So, this is a new series starting in October, in which the first three lectures were on Maya, based mainly upon Shveta Upanishad. Then Absolute and Manifestation, we found, was mainly based upon Kenopanishad and also some ideas of the Gaudapadakarika. And then the next lecture, God in Everything, was based upon Ishopanishad. And now Swamiji is taking, again you may say, or newly, Kathopanishad. So, Swamiji is telling something new. Now, another fact is that this chapter is very much different from all previous chapters. And this chapter is highly ennobling. And Swamiji is turning our attention from the external world to the internal. And he wants us to go beyond our indriyas and our mind. It was hinted in the Necessity of Religion that there are two ways of finding religion. One was to think of the nature and what is beyond nature. And the second was to search out what is the reality in this body. Now, Swamiji compares the two and decides that it is only when we seek our own real nature that we can find the reality. Now let us start reading. I will read to you straight away. As I told you, this series is completely based upon Upanishads. Swamiji is reading one by one. We saw last time how, and for some reason, he little hurriedly read the Ishopanishad. Now he will read Kathopanishad slowly, more than one lecture. I will read to you from one of the Upanishads. It is called the Katha Upanishad. Here, some people who do not know Sanskrit at all. I had a friend in Chandigarh and used to call it Katha Upanishad. The T is taken as T, and TH becomes Th, Katha Upanishad. So please remember, the Roman script is very much insufficient for expressing the Indian words, and for which the scholars have found a method of transliteration, but everybody does not use it. So, this is Katha Upanishad. Katha or Kataka is the name of a branch of the Krishna Yajurveda, and so the name comes to the Upanishad, Katha Upanishad. Upanishad from the Katha branch or Kataka branch of the Krishna Yajurveda. Some of you perhaps have read the translation by Sir Edwin Arnold called The Secret of Death. I told you the other day that Edwin Arnold had popularized three Indian books: Life of Buddha from Lalita Vistar, The Light of Asia; Bhagavad Gita, the Song Celestial; and Kathopanishad, he calls it the secret of death. And that had made the Indian ideas familiar to the Americans, Britishers here, English people. Some of you perhaps have read the translation. By telling this, the old acquaintance comes back to the mind for those who read it, and so understanding becomes smoother. That is the purpose of telling this. Every sentence by somebody has a purpose. I have read the translation by Sir Edwin Arnold called The Secret of Death. In our last lecture, some previous lecture, we saw how the inquiry which started with the origin of the world and the creation of the universe failed to obtain a satisfactory answer from without. From without means from outside. And how it then turned inwards. We imagine this is the world, and outside the world there is some God, extra cosmic God, and He created the world. Now this can never be a satisfactory answer. Somebody will show how, but he is stating here that we have already seen that the inquiry turns inside, and we start searching for our reality. Because until we go beyond our perception, present perception by the indriyas and the mind, we cannot get at the reality. This book psychologically takes up that suggestion. Psychologically means through our mind and going beyond the mind. Questioning into the internal nature of man. So you have to find what is our real nature. Internally. It was first asked who created the external world and how it came into being. That was the previous question. Now the question is, what is that in man which makes him live and move, and what becomes of that when he dies? What is that in man which makes him live and move? So the inquiry is about the reality. Inquiry is about the consciousness in man. Body cannot move by itself. Mind cannot work by itself. So the inquiry is about the consciousness. And what becomes of that when he dies? Dies means the body falls down. Then has the consciousness vanished? What has happened to it? So search for the real nature of man is the new method. The first philosopher studied the material substance. Again, he is going on comparing, and tried to reach the ultimate through that. At the best, they found a personal governor of the universe. This we have seen in several Swamiji's lectures. We come across a Ishvara, God, personal governor of the universe. A human being, immensely magnified. There are 2 points here. We are seeking about the external world, and through our mind. So whatever mind finds, that will be the answer, and that will not be the correct answer. We are human beings, so a human mind, in English it is called anthropomorphism. That means the ideas which arise in human mind. So 2 mistakes will happen here. The external world, as we see, is not the whole world. There are many more levels of the world. One thing. So the data we are studying is partial data. And the instrument with which we are studying is a very limited instrument. We have seen in that absolute and manifestation that time, space and causation constituted our mind. And then, not only mind, we observe the universe through our sense organs. So, whatever is caught by our mind and our sense organs only will become our data, our thinking instrument itself. That is a great mistake by the scientists. They never calibrate or try to find out the validity of the perceiver, the validity of the perceiving instruments. Taking them for granted, they try to study the object. That also taking for granted that there is an object. So much limitation comes. At the best, they found a personal governor of the universe, a human being immensely magnified, but yet to all intents and purposes a human being. Swamiji shows how we cannot think of anything but a human being if we think by our mind. But that could not be the whole of truth. At best, it could be only partial truth. Data is partial, instrument is partial, so we'll get a partial truth, part of the truth. We see this universe as human beings, and our God is our human explanation of the universe. So we are seeing the world through our mind and senses, through human mind and senses, and the thinking apparatus also is human mind. So we'll think of a God who is human. Swamiji is showing that. Suppose a cow were philosophical and had religion. You understand 2 points? Philosophy is the intellectual pursuit of truth. Religion is to bring it into practice. And Vedanta is both, Swamiji told again and again. So, suppose a cow were philosophical and had religion, it would have a cow universe. It will see it through the cow mind and cow senses and a cow solution of the problem. If it thinks, if it is a philosopher, it will think to cow mind, and it would not be possible that it should see our God. Our God is what is imagined by our mind, and so the cow's mind cannot see that. Suppose cats become philosophers, they would see a cat universe and have a cat solution of the problem of the universe and a cat ruling it. So by comparing the different views of the universe, Swamiji is showing that our view is very partial. So we see from this that our explanation of the universe is not the whole of the solution. 2 defects. That universe itself is not the whole. Second point, neither does our conception cover the whole of the universe. Conception is due to our mind. And it cannot cover the whole universe because only through time, space and causation it will think. So we require to have the universe, real universal data, and we require to go beyond our mind to get at the truth. That is the main point in this lecture. To begin with, introduction. It would be a great mistake to accept that tremendously selfish position. Selfish does not mean I want money or all that. Self-centered, contracted, that is the meaning. Contracted as per human perception. That's what Swamiji is calling selfish. It would be a great mistake to accept that tremendously selfish position which man is apt to take, because he never thought of the expansion of the view. Such a solution of the universal problem as we can get from the outside labors under this difficulty that in the first place the universe we see is our own particular universe, our own view of the reality that we have clearly seen in that chapter on absolute and manifestation. That reality we cannot see through the senses. We cannot comprehend it. So actually, senses and mind. Comprehend means mind. Perception is by the senses, comprehension by the mind. And both are human, and we cannot catch the whole of reality. We only know that universe from the point of view of being with five senses. Swamiji explains it beautifully. Because we have only five senses of perception, our view of the universe depends upon the only five elements of the universe. Suppose we obtain another sense, the whole universe must change for us. Suppose we had a magnetic sense, it is quite possible that we might then find millions and millions of forces in existence which we do not know now, and for which we have no present sense or feeling. So, very partial universe we are seeing. Our senses are limited, very limited indeed, and certain range of wavelengths we catch, and that is what is Indriya perception. And within these limitations exists what we call our universe. And our God is the solution of that universe. But that cannot be the solution of the whole problem. So universe itself is very partial, but man cannot stop there. There is a song by Ram Prasad. Somebody was wrongly singing Pran Bhoje Man Bhojana. Sri Ramakrishna corrected it and said Man Bhoje Pran Bhojana. Mind becomes satisfied that I cannot go beyond this. But the being of man, represented by the Bengali word prana. Prana is not the breath. Bengali word prana refers to the being of man, the heart of man. And the being of man is never satisfied, because man himself is potentially divine. Man is a form of Brahman. Brahman being its reality. How it can have a limited vision and be satisfied with that? Common run of man may do that, but not those who are seeking truth. So, this is this step Swamiji is making us take. The solution is a partial solution, but man cannot stop there. He is a thinking being. So Swamiji brings in the real thinking. Not thinking limited by our own mind and organs, but to think that we have to go beyond this to understand the world. He is a thinking being and wants to find a solution which will comprehensively explain all the universes, plural universes. What the universe we see is a physical universe. He wants to see a world which is at once the world of men and of gods, world of gods, and of all possible beings. There are so many types of beings. In India, this comprehension or idea is from time immemorial. And there are various grades of beings having better senses than us, having better mind than us, and to find a solution which will explain all phenomena. So this is the thing. Now, we say we must first find that the universe, which includes all universes, we must find something which by itself must be the material running through all these various planes of existence. Whether we approach it through the senses or not. That means without the senses also we will see another universe. If we could possibly find something which we could know as a common property of the lower as well as of the higher worlds. So, man at certain points of time, the consciousness rises on a higher level, he sees the higher worlds. And we cannot deny that. And we cannot deny that there are people living in those higher worlds. So we have to find some material which is common to this world and that world. Then our problem would be solved. Even if by the sheer force of logic alone we could understand that there must be one basis of all existence. Common reality you have to find. Common reality of the physical, mental, spiritual world. Then our problem might approach to some sort of solution. That is, by logic, we at least in our proper thinking we find that there has to be a common material, so we will be able to make our search better. But the solution certainly cannot be obtained only through the world we see and know. That is the problem. Because it is only a partial view of the whole. This only the one side. Second side is that thinking will again be by our mind. So, that's what we have to do. Our only hope then lies in penetrating deeper. That is the main point. Sukshma. We see the world on surface. We see the world by the five senses. What is beyond that? For that we have to penetrate. The early thinkers discovered that the important point, the early thinkers discovered that the further they were from the center, the more marked were the variations and differentiations, and that the nearer they approached the center, the nearer they were to unity. This Swamiji will explain through a figure. The nearer we are to the center of a circle, the nearer we are to the common ground to which all the radii meet. Different radius, they meet at a common point. From there, if we look at the circle, we will have a better solution. Otherwise, so much variation is there, and we cannot add this plus this and try to find a solution. Impossible. So we have to find the center of the whole universe. Now, so that is the point. The more divergent is our, and the further we are from the center, the more divergent is our radial line from the others. Radial line in the radius, other radius, it is divergent completely. More we go outside, the divergence increases. And so there is no common ground in it where all the phenomena of existence can meet. Different levels, different views, they have to meet. At best, the external world is but one part of the whole of phenomena. There are other parts, the mental, the moral and the intellectual, the various planes of existence, and to take up only one and find a solution of the whole out of that one is simply impossible. This one has to understand. Unless the mind comprehends this idea, we cannot go further. We first therefore want to find somewhere a center from which, as it were, all the other planes of existence start, and standing there, we should try to find a solution. That is the proposition. And where is that center? It is within us. They have to understand. We are entering atmosphere, stratosphere. We are going away from the center, though we are penetrating. If we enter somebody's mind, we are going away from our center. Now, if we are entering ourselves, we are going beyond the human limitations, and there we will find, from that we can see the whole world. So, this is the point of difference. Where is that center? It is within us. This must be comprehended. Center of the whole universe of our perception is within us. Center of the whole universe of our perception is within us. The ancient sages penetrated deeper and deeper until they found that in the innermost core of the human soul is the center of the whole universe. They found that. All the planes gravitate towards that one point. That is the common ground. And standing there alone, can we find a common solution? So the question who made this world is not very philosophical, nor does its solution amount to anything. So, world created by the whom, and this creation and all that will take us outside, and it will be only an anthropomorphic solution. This the Katha Upanishad speaks in very figurative language. So that is the theme of the Katha Upanishad. But figurative language means through a story, through an anecdote. So this is the introduction, Swamiji's introduction to Katha Upanishad. Swamiji's introduction to Katha Upanishad is that solution of the world that appears outside cannot be the real solution. Solution found through penetrating our own personality to find out what is real will give us the solution of the entire universe. This is the introduction. Now he says, let us follow the story told in the Katha Upanishad. That is called figurative language. There was in ancient times a very rich man who made a certain sacrifice which required that he should give away everything that he had. Now this man was not sincere. If the man has so many desires, he cannot be sincere at all. He wanted to get the fame and glory of having made the sacrifice, not only fame and glory, but the result also. But he was only giving things which were of no further use to him. Everything which is useless, that is the definition. He has to give everything. And he made it everything which is useless. Old cows, barren, which were of no further use to him. Old cows, things which, but he was only giving things which were of no further use to him. Old cows, barren, blind and lame. He had a boy called Nachiketas, by his son. This boy saw that his father was not doing what was right, that he was breaking his vow, but he did not know what to say to him. Out of respect, in India, father and mother are living gods to their children, and so the boy approached the father with the greatest respect and humbly inquired of him, Father, to whom are you going to give me? For your sacrifice requires that everything shall be given away. We can connect this story if you want. That father is giving away the old cows. He will get the result of the sacrifice after he dies. So for whom he is keeping the good cows? Not for himself. He is keeping for me. So I am his real property. And if he gives me to some priest or somebody, then his giving everything will be fulfilled. That was the sincere thought. You know this giving? It's not uncommon in India. You know how the Sikh community increases? In Punjab and in Sindh, the first product of the family, first son, is given to become a Sikh. Sri Ramakrishna's Guru Totapuri was also a child given to these sannyasis, first child. So that is the system. And so Nachiketa thought, if unselfish, if my father gives me to some hermit, some priest, some scholar, then his vow will be fulfilled. Father, to whom are you going to give me? For your sacrifice requires that everything shall be given away. The father was very much vexed at this question and replied, what do you mean, boy? A father giving away his own son? Because he is thinking in his own way. Selfishness is keeping the good cows for the son. And if he gives away the son, what is the use? The boy asked the question a second and a third time because he was sincere. And then the angry father, and father became angry. Thee I give unto death, Yama, the god of death. And the story goes on to say that the boy went to Yama, the god of death. Yama was Swamiji is explaining, Yama was the first man who died. He went to heaven and became the governor of all the Pitris, forefathers who die. All the good people who die go and live with him for a long time. He is a very pure and holy person, chaste and good, as his name Yama implies. Yama means self-control. So the boy went to Yama's world, different world than ours. But even gods are sometimes not at home. And 3 days this boy had to wait there. After the third day, Yama returned. "O learned one," said Yama, "you have been waiting here for 3 days without food, and you are a guest worthy of respect. Salutation to thee, O Brahmana, and welfare to me. I am very sorry I was not at home, but for that I will make amends. Ask 3 boons, one for each day." And the boy asked, "My first boon is that my father's anger against me may pass away, that he will be kind to me and recognize me when you allow me to depart." Yama granted this fully. This is called the fulfillment of duties. The next boon was that he wanted to know about a certain sacrifice which took people to heaven. Now we have seen that the oldest idea which we got in the Sangita portion of the Vedas was only about heaven, where they had bright bodies and lived with the fathers. That is the Sangita portion. And we have seen that in the lecture on Maya and the conception of God. Gradually, rather, other ideas came, but they were not satisfying. There was still need for something higher. Living in heaven would not be very different from life in this world. At best, it would only be a very healthy, rich man's life, with plenty of sense enjoyments and a sound body which knows no disease. It would be this material world, only a little more refined. And we have seen the difficulty that the external material world can never solve the problem. So no heaven can solve the problem. If this world cannot solve the problem, no multiplication of this world can do so. Because we must always remember that matter is only an infinitesimal part of the phenomena of nature. Matter is an infinitesimal part of the phenomena of nature. There are hundreds of other things. The vast part of phenomena which we actually see is not matter. For instance, in every moment of our life, what a great part is played by thought and feeling, mind. Compared with this material phenomena outside, how vast is this internal world with its tremendous activity? The sense phenomena are very small compared with it. The heaven solution commits this mistake. It insists that the whole of phenomena is only in touch, taste, sight, etc. So this idea of heaven did not give full satisfaction to all. Yet Nachiketa asked, as the second boon, about some sacrifice through which people might attain to this heaven. There was an idea in the Vedas that these sacrifices pleased the gods and took human beings to heaven. So Swamiji is now telling us that why he asked this second boon. Because 3 boons were granted to him. In studying all religions, we will notice the fact that whatever is old becomes holy. For instance, our forefathers in India used to write on birch bark. But in time they learned how to make paper. Yet the birch bark is still looked upon as very holy. When the utensils in which they used to cook in ancient times were improved upon, the old ones became holy. And nowhere is this idea more kept up than in India. Old methods, which must be 9 or 10,000 years old, as of rubbing two sticks together to make fire, are still followed. At the time of sacrifice, no other method will do. So with the other branches of the Asiatic Aryans. Other branches of Asiatic Aryans, Swamiji will show. These modern descendants still like to obtain fire from lightning, showing that they used to get fire in this way. Even when they learnt other customs, they kept up the old ones, which then became holy. So this is the ancient Aryan. Now, so with the Hebrews. Swamiji is showing a universal human phenomena. They used to write on parchment. They now write on paper, but parchment is very holy, so with all nations. Every rite which you now consider holy was simply an old custom, and the Vedic sacrifices were of this nature. In course of time, as they found better methods of life, their ideas were much improved, still these old forms remained, and from time to time they were practiced and received a holy significance. That means these days we do not do sacrifices to go to heaven. We have found other methods of enjoying life. Then a body of men made it their business to carry on these sacrifices. These were the priests who speculated on the sacrifices, and the sacrifices became everything to them. The gods came to enjoy the fragrance of the sacrifices, and it was considered that everything in this world could be got by the power of sacrifices. If certain oblations were made, certain hymns chanted, certain peculiar forms of altars made, the gods would grant everything. So Nachiketas asked, by what form of sacrifice can a man go to heaven? The second boon was also readily granted by Yama, who promised that the sacrifice should henceforth be named after Nachiketas, because he sincerely listened. Then the third boon comes, figuratively, and with that the Upanishad proper begins. That reality, search for the reality, is the proper Upanishad, it begins. The boy said, there is this difficulty. When a man dies, some say he is, others that he is not. Instructed by you, I desire to understand this. So, what we really are, what persists after the body dies, we are not the body. We move the body, so we are not the body. If we are not the body, if we are something else, then that cannot die. Is it true? Does it die? Does it not die? Can we realize that? The whole life hangs upon this problem. So going inside starts from this third book. But Yama was frightened. This requires a tremendous strength of character, because the entire material world has to be left behind. The world of senses has to be left behind. If we have some longing, lingering look to the sense enjoyments, we cannot proceed directly. So, here it is not a mere philosophy to be thought intellectually. To realize that plane, to realize the real center, we must give up this outside world. And so, whether the boy is asking by some emotional upsurge, or is really capable of that, has to be found out. So, the Yama was frightened. He had been very glad to grant the other two boons. Now he said, the gods in ancient times were puzzled on this point. So getting more powers and enjoyment does not solve the problem. This subtle law is not easy to understand. Choose some other boon, O Nachiketas. Do not press me on this point. Release me. Because I have promised I will give 3 boons. So don't hold me, release me, ask something else. He wants to divert the. This is only a testing. This is only to tell us that what courage, what tyaga is required to get the truth. The boy was determined and said, what you have said is true, O death, that even the gods had doubts on this point, and it is no easy matter to understand, but I cannot obtain another exponent like you, and there is no other boon equal to this Shruti. He says, ask something else. He says, gods had doubt. So, my inquiry gets more firmer. You are able to answer. How can I get some other? You please explain. The second is that ask some other boon. There is no boon equivalent to this because everything is evanescent. I want the permanent reality. So how can there be anything equivalent to this? Unless this becomes the attitude, we cannot proceed further. Death said, then something else he said. Now he wants to tempt him by showing, counting, showing the enjoyments. Death said, ask for sons and grandsons who will live 100 years, many cattle, elephants, gold and horses. Ask for empire on this earth and live as many years as you like. Or choose any other boon which you think equal to this, wealth and long life. Or be thou a king, O Nachiketas, on this wide earth. I will make thee the enjoyer of all desires. Ask for all those desires which are difficult to obtain in this world. That did not tempt Nachiketa. So Yama had the last temptation by showing him some enjoyment physically. These heavenly maidens with chariots and music, which are not to be obtained by man, are yours. Let them serve you, O Nachiketas, but do not question me as to what comes after death. Swamiji has told that figuratively he is telling, what he is telling, he wants to go beyond the mind, he wants to be guided to go there. Man cannot by his ordinary limited mind go there. So, Nachiketas said, these are merely things of a day, O death. They wean away the energy of all the sense organs. You are asking me to enjoy. The more we enjoy, the more we lose the strength of our indriyas. There is a shloka by Bhartrihari. Bhogana bhukta vayameva bhukta. We do not enjoy, we get enjoyed. When this matter of enjoyment comes, one picture stands in front of my eyes. I don't know whether in America and elsewhere that practice is there. In India, it is very common that sugarcane juice is sold. There are handcarts and there is a machine and we ask for the sugarcane juice. Now that man takes a sugarcane and presses it through 2 rollers. We thought the juice has come out. He will then fold that sugarcane, again press it. Then once more fold and again press it. Till every drop of juice comes out. That happens to man when he tries to enjoy. That picture comes before the eye. The man will be reduced to that straw, that what is left behind the wooden part of the sugarcane. Bhogana bhukta vayameva bhukta. And Nachiketa told, this is what happens. These are merely things of a day or death. They wean away the energy of all the sense organs. Even the longest life is very short because it comes to an end. These horses and chariots dances and songs may remain with thee. Man cannot be satisfied by wealth. Can we retain wealth when we behold thee? That means one day we have to die. What is wealth? We shall live only so long as thou desirest. Only the boon which I asked is chosen by me. Yama was pleased with this answer and said, Now still Yama does not give him the truth immediately. A subtle principle of life to fortify his vairagya, his renunciation, Yama will lead to. This is called Shreya Preya Vivek. Subtler tendencies in the mind are there. Yama was pleased with his answer and said, perfection is one thing and enjoyment another. Unless we are very clear about this, we have no procedure at all. These two having different ends engage men differently. He who chooses perfection becomes pure. He who chooses enjoyment misses his true end. Both perfection and enjoyment present themselves to man. The wise man, having examined both, distinguishes one from the other. That is the problem. Sometimes this enjoyment comes in a different form. Duty, so many hundreds of things are brought. Actually, it is nothing but the craving of the flesh. So the man has to discriminate, understand, separate, and find out this is the road to perfection. No mixture will do. The wise man, having examined both, distinguishes one from the other. He chooses perfection as being superior to enjoyment. But the foolish man chooses enjoyment for the pleasure of his body. For the body, he chooses enjoyment. O Nachiketas, having thought upon the things which are only apparently desirable, thou hast wisely abandoned them. So, the inside renunciation has been fortified by this. Otherwise, on the way, when he meets some more enjoyments, he may lose the track. And that is why this has been, at one point, appreciation, at the second point, inspiration for further progress. Death then proceeded to teach Nachiketa. We now get a very developed idea of renunciation. And Vedic morality, renunciation and Vedic morality, that until one has conquered the desire for enjoyment, the truth will not shine in him. In the lecture on Maya, we had seen this. Because we crave for the senses, so there is a mist and we cannot understand the reality. So long as these vain desires of our senses are clamoring and as it were dragging us outwards every moment, making us slaves to everything outside, to a little color, a little taste, a little touch, slaves we become, notwithstanding all our pretensions. How can the truth express itself in our hearts? So the purity is necessary through renunciation. Otherwise we may pretend to be big philosophers, but when the carrion comes, God and mammon cannot be served together. Yama said, that which is beyond never rises before the mind of a thoughtless child deluded by the folly of riches. Further fortification. That which is beyond never rises before the mind of a thoughtless child deluded by the folly of riches. This world exists, the other does not. Thinking thus, they come again and again under my power. They have to die again and again. When they think that this world is all that exists, what we see by the senses is all that. How they can get the truth? They have to die again and again. To understand this truth is very difficult. What is the meaning of difficult? It's not a mathematical problem, it's not a philosophical problem. The word difficult in spiritual context only means lying in depth. You have to penetrate very deep, then only you find it. That is the meaning of the word difficult. On the surface you cannot get. Many, even hearing it continually, do not understand it. For the seeker must be wonderful, so must be the hearer, speaker. Speaker must be wonderful. One who has realized the truth is not an ordinary person. He has changed completely. So he has to be wonderful. And the hearer has to be intent on going beyond. Hearer has to have the transcendental trend of his life. He has to go beyond. And the speaker is wonderful because he has realized the truth. He is a changed person. The teacher must be wonderful, so must be the taught. Neither is the mind to be disturbed by vain argument. There is another problem with the modern man. And Swamiji has shown in the lecture on Maya that our reason itself is limited by time, space and causation. But this the man does not understand. I will find everything through reason. Neither is the mind to be disturbed by vain argument, for it is no more a question of argument, it is a question of fact. Experience has to be there, and so transcendental experience has to be there. Reason cannot help us. We have always heard that every religion insists on our having faith. We have been taught us to believe blindly. Well, this Swamiji is now comparing faith, reason, beyond. We have been taught us to believe blindly. Well, this idea of blind faith is objectionable, no doubt. What they mean, we do not understand. They mean that reason will not take you to the solution. That does not mean you believe anything which anybody is telling. You can take anything as hypothesis. Be ready to go beyond, not limited by reason. That is the main point. But apparently by religions we find you have to faith. We have always heard that every religion insists on our having faith. We have been taught to believe blindly. That means don't question anything. Well, this idea of blind faith is objectionable, no doubt, but analyzing it, we find that behind it is a very great truth. That means why they are asking? They are meaning that reason is an insufficient instrument. We have to go beyond. That is the main point. And if they have gone beyond, they show the process by which to go beyond, and then we follow them. What it really means is what we read now. The mind is not to be ruffled by vain arguments, because argument will not help us to know God. We have seen this. Reason can disprove things which are wrong, but reason cannot show us the truth. Reason always moves with several facts together. And if we know that the reality is one without a second, how can reason take us there? It is a question of fact and not of argument. All argument and reasoning must be based upon certain perception. We have to have transcendental perception. Then the field of reason changes. Reason works only on the data supplied by the senses. Unless you have the higher data, how can reason work there? Without this, there cannot be any argument. Reasoning is the method of comparison between certain facts which you already perceived. If these perceived facts are not there already, there cannot be any reasoning. So first Indriyas supply data, then we reason. If this is true of external phenomena, why it not be true of the internal? The chemist takes certain chemicals and certain results are produced. This is a fact. You see it, sense it, and make that the basis on which to build all your chemical arguments. So with the physicists, so with all other sciences, all knowledge must stand on perception of certain facts. And upon that we have to build our reasoning. Now we have already seen that the perception of physical facts is not going to be sufficient. But curiously enough, the vast majority of mankind think, especially at the present time, that no such perception is possible in religion. There the whole world differs from Samyakanda, or the real Indian thought. No theory. That religion can only be apprehended by vain arguments. Therefore, we are told not to disturb the mind by vain arguments. Only by argument you tell that our religion is superior, and if you accept that you will go to God, is nonsense. You have to experience. Fact means fact of experience. Therefore, we are told not to disturb the mind by vain arguments. Religion is a question of fact, not of talk. We have to analyze our own souls and to find what is there. Inside, and we have to find what is the truth. We have to understand it and to realize what is understood. You have to understand and then experience that and be firm in that experience. Take it as the truth. That is religion. So Swamiji has defined religion like that. Suppose philosophy comes. Suppose intellectually we understand, but there it does not end. We have to experience that. No amount of talk will make religion. So the question whether there is a God or not can never be proved by argument. For the arguments are as much on one side as on the other. But if there is a God, He is in our own hearts. Have you ever seen Him? So the experience has to improve. If there is a transcendental reality, not He is sitting on the clouds. But clouds of ignorance are there in our heart, and we have to penetrate deeper to find the truth there. The question as to whether this world exists or not has not yet been decided. We perceive, but is it real? It vanishes. Can it be real? It changes. Can it be real? And the debate between the idealist and the realist is endless. Idea, some people believe ideas are true. They are reflected of the world. Some people believe world is true. From that we get ideas. But never any solution. Because both are limited. Senses are limited, mind is also limited. And we have to go beyond. And the realist is endless. Yet we know that the world exists, that it goes on. We know because we see. We only change the meaning of words. So with all the questions of life, we must come to facts. In arguments, we go on changing the words, that's all. There are certain religious facts which, as in external science, have to be pursued. And upon them religion will be built. Of course, the extreme claim that you must believe every dogma of a religion is degrading to the human mind. Swamiji is discriminating. Dogma means some theory without any rational proof. That is called dogma. Doctrine has supporting arguments. Dogma has no supporting argument. And that will degrade us because our thinking capacity will be lost and we can follow anything which is wrong even. So analyze as far as we can with the transcendental trend. Let him tell the process by which he has proceeded. Let us follow that process. That is the way. Oh. I will finish off this para. And if you believe, degrades you too. The man who seeks you to believe everything degrades himself. And if you believe, degrades you also too. regrets himself because he has no experience. The sages of the world have only the right to tell us that they have analyzed their minds and have found these facts, and if we do the same, we shall also believe and not before. That is the main point. You have proceeded in this way, if you proceed in that way, you will also get. That is all that there is in religion. But you must always remember this, that as a matter of fact, 99.9% of those who attack religion have never analyzed their minds. Important. So-called rationalists have never struggled to get at the facts. So their arguments do not have any weight against religion any more than the words of a blind man who cries out, "You are all fools who believe in the sun," would affect us. So we will continue this on the next run, but remember the introduction that from outside we will not get a solution. We want to go to the center, and by transcending inside senses and mind and all that, that is how we will get the truth. And that is been told by the Yama Nachiketa story. We shall continue it on the next run. Om Paratatve Sada Lino Ramakrishna Samagya Yo Dharma Stapana Rato Viresham Tam Namamyaham. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hare Om Tat Sat. Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.